now time, post this session on a fireside chat, maintaining a health-conscious approach to life of a competitor gaming. Well, for this, we are joined by our eminent speakers, Josh Otero, co-founder and CEO, NutriGMR. We've got Melita, the founder and CEO, Levels Unlocked Enterprises, and we've got Ryan Scollan, the co-founder and CEO, Gscience, joining us. Well, with this, the stage and screen is all yours. Thank you for joining us. Let's have an incredible fireside chat.
Hi, I hope you're keeping well. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. My name is Ryan Scollan, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Gscience. Today, we have a really exciting panel, and it's going to be on health and wellness within esports and gaming. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Melita, who is the founder of Levels Unlocked Enterprises, and Josh Otero, who is the CEO and founder of NutriGMR. Welcome to you both. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. And we're so glad that we're able to have this panel today.
Awesome.
Excited to be here.
So I think we can all say it has been an interesting year for the world when it comes to health and wellness, specifically with COVID running rampage across the globe. But specifically within esports and gaming, we've seen a lot of developments in the last 12 months. For both of you, what have you seen in terms of the esports and gaming industry when it comes to health and wellness, and what's really been changing over the last year?
I'll start. Again, yes, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be on with you, Ryan and Josh. This has obviously been a very interesting year and a half for everyone. My name is Dr. Melita Moore. As Ryan said, I am the CEO and founder of Levels Unlocked Enterprises, and also the Chief Medical Officer of Level Up Sports Medicine. I'm a professional team physician for over a decade now, taking care of traditional sports. So in the NBA, WNBA, NFL, and for the past 2.5 years, I've been in esports. And so I was a head team physician for NBA 2K team here in the United States. And as a team physician for a professional esports team, starting with that in 2019 pre-COVID, and now 2021 post-COVID, there's been a very interesting shift with regard to health and wellness. In 2019, I didn't really even know much about esports, so people don't get mad. And I also certainly didn't know what a professional gamer needed. And so I really had the opportunity to take a very deep dive, learn about professional gaming, and see really what was out there for health and wellness. And sadly, in 2019, there wasn't a lot of information that was out there, but we have seen that grow over the past 2 years. And so I'm very glad about that. What's been very interesting in this transition pre and post COVID for the gamer, I don't think a lot has changed from what they're doing from a professional perspective, other than obviously competition. But certainly there are certain key things that I think have had an uptick from a wellness perspective with regard to health. So when I think about health and wellness for a professional gamer, I think about mental health, number one, vision health, sleep, nutrition, exercise. And so those are kind of some of the big buckets that I think about. We're right now in a pandemic of insomnia. And so when we're talking about professional gamers who really aren't sleeping a lot, whether it's because they're grinding all night, whether it's because of, too much blue light from the screen, lack of exercise, it's now kind of compounded. So I think that's one difference that we can certainly talk about today is sleep, the importance of sleep, the lack of sleep. And now everyone is experiencing this insomnia around the world just due to the pandemic.
That's really interesting, Melita. I think sleep is definitely one thing that it's going to be very topical. I'm sure we're going to touch upon a lot more in the coming moments. Josh, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself and give your perspectives on what you've seen in the last year?
Absolutely. Josh Otero. Again, thanks for having me here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of NutriGMR. We are a cognitive performance company really designed as a anti-energy drink, healthy alternative. So we were designed for the gamer, that cognitive athlete that's always trying to perform at a high level from the cognition standpoint versus in the gym. And so, we wanted to create, we saw what's out there, and we saw, back in 2019, my co-founder, or 2017, he started studying esport athletes and really noticed that, they're drinking these energy drinks and then it was affecting their performance. So we wanted to, he called me up and we wanted to start something that was healthier that would actually help the athletes versus hinder them, especially from the diabetes and lack of concentration in the long term. So we created NutriGMR really to solve that issue. And then along the way, I'm a big fan of the military and saw this connection potential to connect gamers with military and vets. So I started a foundation called the Warrior Gamer Foundation. It's Warrior GMR Foundation. And we pair active duty and vets with gamers. And we just held our first ever Rocket League tournament in Glendale, Colorado last month. We had all the military branches, including the US Coast Guard and the US Space Force. And it was a huge success. And our focus is really on that intergenerational play, mental health, and community building. And so those are the two organizations that I run, is the NutriGMR and then the Warrior Gamer Foundation. So I've had kind of different perspectives in seeing it. I've seen it some from the military side, and then I've seen it also from the esport athletes and gamers perspective. And one of the things that I've seen, we focus a lot on mental health. So I pay particular attention to mental health and some of the issues there and lack of focus and concentration. And I've seen a big spike in, or we've seen a big spike in mental health issues since, COVID, especially over the last year. And we've also seen a lot of research and studies that show that gaming actually helps improve mental health and happiness, because it gives them a sense of that community. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. So one of the biggest things, obviously we talk about sleep, we talk about drinking enough water, diet, and then obviously cutting out your sugary energy drinks is a big way to help that. But then it's the community building. So that's what, one of the things, as I mentioned, that we're really focused on is building those communities to engage and have fun, because if you're stuck at home, you might as well be having fun. Otherwise it leads to other issues. So that's, one of the things that my biggest thing is the mental health and what we've seen over the last, year, 12 to 18 months.
Awesome, Josh. I suppose I'll do a quick introduction to myself. So my name is Ryan Scollan. I am the CEO and co-founder of Gscience. So originally we built Gscience to solve the physical and mental well-being crisis within gaming. Very much like both yourself, Melita, and Josh, I seen that there was a massive lack of understanding of how to take a healthy approach towards gaming, both at the recreational kind of grassroots when it comes to when we discuss kind of finding a healthy balance between playing video games and living a healthy and sustainable lifestyle, but also at the competitive level. And my background is a sports scientist, so I studied at Loughborough University and studied sports science. I was fascinated to see how could we improve gamer performance. And given the fact that in traditional sports, a lot of the areas within physical, nutritional, psychological science is being quite pushed forward and developed, one of the areas that's still quite novel is cognitive science. And obviously working with esports athletes, you're working on the cutting edge of cognitive athletes. And to me, that really excited me, and it was something that I wanted to get more involved with. So over the last 3 years, we have been working with a range of professional esports athletes the whole way down to grassroots to really better understand, what are their challenges, what are their pain points, and how can we take our existing knowledge from traditional sports science and apply it and tailor it to helping esports athletes improve their health and well-being, which leads to better in-game performance. So our main business is an esports consulting business where we provide a holistic approach to optimizing gamer performance, looking at things, as we've already covered, such as physiology, psychology, nutrition, sleep recovery, ergonomics, and everything that it really takes to build a high-performing esports team and also high-performing esports athlete. And we're also working on another project that we've been working on for the last 9 months now, which is all around the wider gaming market and how we can help educate and empower esports gamers as well as the recreational gamer to lead a more balanced and healthy lifestyle throughout the games industry. So in terms of my take on things as well, I think it's been a really interesting time, specifically for the adoption of sports science and health and wellness support for professional esports teams. So one of our partners is the Prodigy Agency, and Prodigy represents 100 of the world's best esports athletes, primarily within Valorant and CSGO. And we've had the privilege of working with a lot of them players. And I think for us, what we've really noticed is specifically during COVID, there has been a lot more need for mental health support. I think, as we've already touched upon and everyone's well aware, we have been isolated. And Josh, as you mentioned before the call, we are creatures that need that physical interaction. So when that's lacking, I think there's a massive strain on our mental well-being there. But I also think it's been really interesting to see how some orgs have been open-minded to adopting health and wellness and how that's paid dividends in their results, such as the likes of Mad Lions here in Europe and Rogue, who have done phenomenally well in the LEC. And they are two teams that have had Ishmael as a performance psychologist there, and Martina, who have been building these high-performance environments over the last 2 years. And it's been fantastic to see how that's come to fruition and led to better team and in-game performance. So I'm really interested to see, and one of the questions I want to ask you both next is, we've obviously seen esports teams start to adopt these healthier approaches to gaming and start building out, let's say, a staff that resembles that of traditional sports in terms of the team and behind the actual team. What do you think it's going to take for more teams to start investing in health and wellness to help improve the health of their gamers and the performance in game?
I think that we are starting to see more of this, like you said, the team behind the teams. I certainly feel that way when taking care of my athletes. What we are starting to see, which is the good trend, is that I know a lot of the professional teams are now starting to have mental health coaches or mental health providers, and that's kind of the core of their wellness team, which I think is a great start. But there's so much more to go. And I know that this has kind of been a slow ramp up in the adoption of health and wellness from a professional organization perspective. But it's still so interesting because me having the dichotomy of taking care of a traditional athlete and an esports athlete, both professional level, what I provide for my WNBA team, which is the women's national basketball team, or even our NBA G League team, was vastly different than my NBA 2K team, which is our professional esports team. There wasn't a medical team at all. But we're under an organization that is a traditional sport organization. It's so interesting that even for some of these larger organizations, for these esports teams, they are either owned by owners of professional sports or by professional athletes. And you understand, and we were talking about this a little earlier, about the return on investment. And I always said the player is the investment. So if you're not making taking the time and putting the resources behind the player, how can you expect to win? Everybody wants to win. But on traditional side, we have access to any and every specialist that we need. On the esports side, what we see with a lot of the professional organizations, they don't have anything. And so if you're expecting them to win, year after year, you have to pour in the resources. And so starting with mental health coaching or sports and performance, that's great. But let's also start to up that team some, so that you're getting actually a team physician, a sports medicine physician. You are getting a nutritionist on board. You are getting kind of everything from exercise physiology, eye doctor. We people don't really talk a lot about vision, but we're, professional esports athletes and just gamers in general are on the screen for hours, and vision health has not really had much impact at all. And so from the medical side, I am really pushing for the organizations to invest in the players, because that is your investment. And if they don't win, the organization doesn't win, you don't make the money. So, I certainly think that there's a lot that can be done. And I think taking a page from seeing some of these elite teams that are winning, that have this small medical organization behind them, I think we're going to start to see that more and more. So pay attention.
Josh, what about yourself? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Melita, and I've seen it. So, one of the things that I pointed out that, we've spoke about in the past is the path to pro. And, the traditional athlete has a very linear, distinct path to pro, where esports, there really isn't any. And so one of the other major differences too is esport athletes, they typically will peak and at college age. So they're skipping college, where if you want to make it to the NFL or NBA, you're typically going to college and then getting recruited from college, where it's the vice versa. Typically, as an esport athlete retires, they go to college and then play on scholarship. So that's flip-flopped. So the resources that they have available at all ages is not there, where a typical NBA or NFL player would have. So that, I don't know how, that's a whole larger topic that, from a global perspective, I just think providing education and content so they could see that there is resources out there. But from the team side, I've seen, we've seen since 2017, a couple teams started to put together a high performance program as if they were a professional sport. And I think I've seen it recently. Teams are starting to look at themselves as professional teams, like a NFL, like I'm the Dallas Cowboys. So esports teams are starting to think of themselves as professional sports teams. Well, every single professional traditional sports team has a nutritionist, exercise scientist, physician. They have all of those resources. Now we're starting to see it, slowly, but I was just approached this last week in Chicago by a professional esports team about wanting to set something up. So I know for sure, because I've seen it directly and I've been just approached as of last week, how to set these programs up. So I think that's in the future, every professional esports team is going to have something similar than a Cowboys or a Chicago Bears or Arizona Cardinals has.
Yeah, and I think just kind of touching upon both the things you just said there, Melita, in particular, what you said about that kind of multidisciplinary team. There's an argument to say you can bring in one practitioner who could be an expert in one area, but that means that all them other areas that you just touched upon will not be covered. And I think in order to create the best high-performing environment for the team, you really need to have multiple brains in there who are experts in their field to be able to build that template that you need to then build upon to build out an organization such as the Dallas Cowboys, for example. And I think it takes time as well. And I think it takes levels of buy-in. And I'm sure you've all experienced this as well. I know we definitely, early days, we had to work with 3 amateur teams first before we got our first shot with Gamers Origin, a professional French team, where we flew to France and did a boot camp. And it was on the back of that, on the back of collecting all this data and starting to show that we could actually improve gamers' performance, that we actually get our chance then to work with the professional players. And I think it takes a lot of time. But Josh, going back to what you just said there as well about the academy system, it's something that's been really fascinating for us actually within Gscience. And I think it's really interesting that we have kind of myself from the UK and you two from North America. You've obviously got a well-established collegiate system there in terms of how collegiate sport is done. Whereas in the UK, we don't really have that. We have more of the professional teams would set up the likes of football academy, and you'd go up through the age ranks that way. Now, question I have for both of you too, because I think this is quite interesting in particular. We talk about return on investment, right? Who is going to be the next team to scout the next TENS or the next Optic Scumpy, for example? Imagine if you could take this blueprint that we're talking about building here, like our practitioners like ourselves, and start building this into the team and then building it down for talent identification. Imagine how much that's going to save you if you can identify the next up-and-coming player, put in the right infrastructure and support around them, really meaning that when they get to that top, they can stay at the top and do that for a long period of time. It's something we forget to talk about as well in esports and gaming is career longevity. So many players come in, get pushed really hard for 3 years, especially out in the Asia scene, and then get burnt out and it's the next talent in. So what I want to throw back onto both of you and get your thoughts on is about the academy scene. How and when should pro teams start looking at investing in academies? And also, what model and shape does it take? In traditional sports, we have things like LTADs, where, based upon long-term athlete development programs, so based upon the actual sport itself, for example, rugby or football, they will be slightly different because usually it's based on physical maturation. So when you're 16, you're not going to be playing against the senior men's team. Whereas in esports, you could have a 13-year-old Fortnite player playing against someone who's 25. How do we create these tailored programs to ensure that these young players that we have in our academy get put into the pro scene at the right time? So there are kind of 2 questions I have for you is about how and when should pro teams adopt this template, and what does that template look like for building out academies and building out high performance? Melita, I'm going to start with you first.
I don't know what that's going to look like. I do know that some of the professional esports teams are already starting to do that. They are looking at much younger talent, and they're starting to have them through their own pipeline, through their organization. but those are very select few. Like you were saying, here in the United States, in our collegiate system, you can go to university on a scholarship for gaming and for esports, which I think is a very big win, because even if you're not necessarily going to go on to be a professional gamer, you now are in university on a scholarship. You get to learn and get your education. Maybe you're doing something within the gaming industry itself. But it's very interesting. We were talking about longevity, because typically a professional esports athlete, their career is over at 22, 24, and more so because of burnout, because of excessive use, this repetitive use injuries that we see, which are called musculoskeletal injuries, like the muscle and bone injuries. When you look at a traditional athlete, let's take a Cristiano Ronaldo, let's take a LeBron James, they're, a little bit older and far, and still are at the top of their game. But we don't see that in esports. And I certainly think it's because of how we grind. I hope that we take away from traditional sport and bring into esport is that you don't need to be practicing 12 to 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day, that we can, because this is all about performance, and everything I think we're talking about from a health and wellness perspective is about human performance. And if you do all these things, you're going to play better. And it all certainly centers at cognitive wellness. And that's how I see it, kind of the brain, eye, body. But I hope that we take from traditional sport over into esport in this younger generation, in these academies, that we're not playing these, LeBron is not in the basketball court for 12 hours a day putting up shots. There's just no way. There's no way for your muscles to recover, for your brain to recover, for your sleep to recover. And so I am hopeful that with us having the science, such as your company, that we are able to get out some hard facts, black and white numbers that shows the science, that you can maybe train for 4 to 6 hours and you still have the same performance. There's some data that's already out there that's supporting that shorter practice time, 4 to 5 hours, actually peaks your performance. Anything after 6 hours, then you start to decline in your performance. It's all about human performance. We all want to be at the top of our game. So that is one thing I want to see. I don't know how we set up those academies. I know in the UK, the British Esports Association is certainly doing some amazing work kind of from the younger generation, grassroots, and starting to build this pipeline around education, around performance, which is, I think it's just a very genius of what they're doing. But I know some organizations are already starting to do that. Here in the US, we also have some great academies, if you want to kind of put that name on it. And Danny Martin with Exposure in Dallas, Texas, certainly creating a great pipeline, starting with younger generation, teaching them the skills that they need from a younger age and kind of coming through that path to pro. So it's a big question. I think there's a few things that we can do. And from academy perspective, I certainly think we're going to see that with the appropriate training once we have the research to back it up.
I like that. Josh, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I obviously completely agree with Melita, but taking it from the back, I think it's that grind culture, right? The only way to get better is to play 12 to 18 hours a day. And that's not the case. And as Melita said, and as your research is showing, we don't need to do that, right? 4 to 6 hours is all you need, or any more than that, it's a negative. So I think just reversing that grind culture and, I need to play. One of the obstacles that we've seen is because, the US is on different time zone when we're playing scrims or when we're playing games, it may be 8 o'clock in the morning for me, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning for you. So it's the sleep, going back to Melita's point about the sleep cycle and how important that is. That's one issue that, obviously still has to be addressed, but playing 18 hours a day or 12 hours a day doesn't work. No traditional athlete does it. No esport athlete should do it. You're never going to get to the peak of your game by doing that. And as we're saying, the burnout is 22, 23 years old. LeBron James is 40. Tom Brady is 42, I think 41, 42. Won the Super Bowl. There's no esport athletes that are peaking at 42. So why is that? Well, their sleep cycles, their hormone cycles, everything's messed up because they've been grinding so hard that they don't have that longevity. And then they're drinking, energy drinks and all that stuff that just destroys their bodies and how their systems work. So, going back to the question on the academies, there are some teams here in the United States that have them, especially like summer camps to put the kids through to kind of see if there's any exceptionals that they could kind of, start to target. But I think it's going to take money and, for them to be able to monetize that. And then we're going to start to see them put the resources towards those feeder systems. So then they need something to vet, so they could take the kids that have this exceptional talent and put them on their A teams. So I think that's what that's going to take, but they need resources, and there has to be education. The education needs to be stop grinding, start sleeping, drink more water and exercise. And I think once that happens, and all you have to do is look at a traditional athlete, right? They're all pretty much doing that. They sleep, they have coaches, if you don't sleep 8 hours, you're in trouble. Like you have to eat this meal. And obviously there's teams already that have chefs. So they live in the house, they're told when to wake up, they're told, when to go to bed. They take their breaks for their games, but they also have workout training, and they also have mindset, mental training, recovery, all that type of stuff. So, I think it's starting at the very high level, but then there's that 97% that doesn't have it, that hopefully this drips down to, just like you see a traditional sport, it starts to trickle down to your everyday people. And I would hope that's what it's going to be. And as companies and sponsors start to see that, they're going to fund more of these, academy systems, which will then get more resources, and they can hire the nutritionists and the physicians like Melita.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a few really interesting points that you both kind of talked upon there that I was going to elaborate on. So one of the things you talked about there is the need for education. I think we're all in agreement that we really need to educate more gamers on the benefits of health and wellness, not only for in-game performance, but just for living a more healthy, balanced, holistic lifestyle. And I think that's something we always forget. We obviously come at this through a lens of performance because we're working with competitive individuals, but performance takes many different forms. It can be performance in game, performance in life, performance in relationships. It can be anything. You just want to be the best version of you. And I think we really need to focus on educating gamers that it's about that holistic, well-balanced lifestyle. The other thing I think is really interesting, and from my experience now and what I'm seeing, a lot of the top players who have gotten to the elite level have done that through the grind culture, right? And what we tend to see is a lot of the top coaches who are in these teams probably got there themselves, who are ex-players, through grinding the game and through making these sacrifices. And this is the type of culture that is embedded in esports and gaming in the current day. So one of the things in which we've tried to do is work with these individuals to not only help show them the benefits of health and wellness, not only how it improves their quality of life, but also how it can make them that 1% better in game. And that's how we try to get the guys and girls who are at that elite level set in their ways, more open-minded to health and well-being. What we've also found is if you can get one of the big players or big influencers to talk about it, then the other players go, well, if he or she is doing that, maybe I need to be doing that as well. And then what we're starting to see is more of a trickle-down effect, as you mentioned, Josh, where if we can get the big names talking about it, we know the power of influencers in gaming. We know how strong the gaming culture is. We know the influence in which they hold. We and our strategy at Gscience is working with these individuals to disseminate the information, because no one's really going to care what I say. Let's be honest about it. But I know, for example, if Scream or Tens or whoever it is says it, their audience might wake up and say, hold on a minute, we need to start taking this seriously. The other thing that we've noticed from my experience over the last kind of year or so is the actual aspiring pro players who are coming into the industry, the young guns, they're more open-minded and receptive to the health and wellness, because they understand if they want to get to the top, they've got to be doing stuff that the guys and girls at the top aren't doing. So therefore, they're looking for all these different tools and ways in which they can get the competitive edge. And obviously, all three of us would be in agreement. It's kind of silly not to invest in this stuff, because we know the science is there. The cognitive science over the last 20 years and physical activity and improvements in cognitive performance is all there. We just have little re-science within esports and gaming, but that is all coming. And it's going to, I'm pretty confident, going to say the same thing. Investing in health and wellness will be the best investment you can make for your health and your performance. So I think that's the shift that I'm seeing in the industry. I'm firmly in belief that if we can get more of the top individuals educated about health and wellness, get them bought in, they can then be the gateway to allow it to spread across the industry and hopefully create the next generation of healthier, more rounded, well-balanced gamers. That's my hope.
Ryan, that's very great. I know as we're wrapping up, I just want to just touch on your point. Like you were saying, these top gamers now, the coaches now, they all have grown up in this grind culture. But I'm not only am I a sports medicine physician, I'm also a brain injury specialist. So concussion is a large part of my work. And where we saw concussion 15 years ago in football, American football, and rugby, it's certainly not where we see concussion now, and how we treat concussion is very different than how we treat it now. Rules have changed because of that. And so I think this is the same thing, but it's all because of education and awareness. We are more educated about the process. We understand that, maybe not having a contact practice 7 days a week, or, not having 2 practices a day, how that helps to decrease the rate of injury or concussion. But we certainly take that over to the esports side, and it's a cultural shift. And you're absolutely right. And we are starting to see that cultural shift, even with just very prominent streamers who are not professional gamers, but they're streamers. They're showing their workouts along with streaming. They're talking about their nutrition. And so, like you were saying, influencers are very big in the gaming industry. And if there is a team that's listening, if there are sponsors that are listening, we know that the gamers today are the consumers of tomorrow. And so we are really talking and preaching this health and wellness and all these things we can do to create these healthy digital lifestyles. This is the time to get on that train, because this train has certainly left the gate and it's moving. And I think that we are going to see this shift from the younger generation now coming up and talking about, where's my performance coach? Where's my, psychologist, my sports psychologist, so I can know how to grind, but not over grind. Where's my team physician? These are the conversations that they are now having, and it's starting to be an expectation. And I think in the next 5 to 7 years, we'll see that now it's finally going to be the standard.
Awesome. Yeah. Any closing words, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I like habits, right? So, going back to the mental health and how do we improve that as if I'm a team owner or if I'm a team coach, how am I improving the health and wellness of my athletes? And I think it starts by instilling habits, and the habits are, we try to get to bed at the same time or around the same time. So we know our schedules, right? Because unless we're playing in a tournament, we know our schedule. So instilling these habits of, okay, every morning I wake up, I do my stretch routine, I drink a couple glasses of water, and then I might meditate or do whatever, and then I get going. But it's instilling these habits with your team. If you look at, again, taking it back to traditional athletes, they've created habits. And if we could start creating habits as they are younger, those habits lead into as they get older. So if they're practicing, meditation habits, they're practicing breathing habits, especially before they go into game, where they could get their parasympathetic system activated so they're not all stressed out and then they can't focus on their game. Drinking water, that sleep, that mental health, and really creating, if I'm an owner, if I'm a coach, I'm teaching my athletes these habits, and I'm trying to instill that in them on a daily basis, where then it just becomes, I'm not thinking about it. I don't think about waking up and doing my stretches and breathing and then going and drinking a couple glasses of water. It's just a habit. So the more we can just have them as a habit and then not have them have to think about it every day, the more intrinsic that'll be. And then it's going back to both of your points, it's educating them at the younger ages. So then that just stays with them. If you're a LeBron James, you've been doing the same thing for 20 years. He hasn't changed anything, except maybe he's added more recovery to it. He hasn't changed anything. He still sleeps like a champ. He still eats like a champ. He still drinks like a champ. He's probably doing it more now because he's getting in his 40s. So, if we could start instilling that as an owner or as a coach, I think that's going to add more value to our team. And then it improves longevity, because one of the things that I'd like to see is the team cohesiveness. It's hard to build a team when you have an athlete, every one of your athletes are gone every year. I don't have a team, there's no cohesiveness. So if we could start building more resilient athletes, we could start building stronger teams and have a team that stays together, like the New York, whatever team, like the Chicago Bulls back when I was watching Jordan, right? If we could keep a cohesive team together, we're going to perform better and we're going to have a better environment and a community. But if we're switching players every other year, it's really hard to build that. And then it's hard to build a brand. if we're trying to build the Dallas Cowboys or something like that for our communities, as if I'm a owner of, if I'm a owner of a major esports team, I want to build that community around me. So my state of Arizona, I want to build, following. Well, if I don't have somebody like a Fitzgerald that they could latch onto and stay with for several years, it's going to be hard for me to build that community engagement, which is drive sponsors, which then drives money, which then allows me to fund the programs. So I think it starts really at the top, and then it works down, just like from a professional athlete and the skills that they're taught. It's, what is my ownership? What are my coaches teaching me? And is it the habits that we need to be successful to create that longevity?
Look, this has been an awesome discussion. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time today, but I think, Melita, you've probably said it best there today. The train for health and wellness has really and truly left the station. If you're a team owner now listening or an investor, I think now is the time to get on board before it goes like a locomotive. So thank you very much, Josh and Melita. It has been a pleasure chatting with you. I hope everyone in the audience has learned something useful today. If you would like to find out more, Melita and Josh, where can we find you at?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Melita Moore.
You can find me on LinkedIn at Josh Otero, or NutriGMR.com. It's NutriGMR.com.
And you can find me, Ryan Scollan, on LinkedIn or on Twitter at Gscience.io. Thank you very much for listening, and all the best. Enjoy the rest of the conference, folks.
So ladies and gentlemen, what a fantastic session that was, the Fireside Chat on maintaining a health-conscious approach to life.